Okay, so what I'm going to talk about here is Fair Maiden Works at Shuttles, or Jade Maiden Works at Shuttles, or Fair Lady Works at Shuttles, or Fair Maiden Works at Shuttles, or with probably 4 or 5 other ones, and then their requisite combinations. From Yang style Taiji Chuan. This is the sort of little sequence that really just throws everyone for 6 types of loops. It's not, it follows all the same principles as everything else. Some of the problems I've had for me and I've seen is really kind of twofold. And one is just making sure the hand, foot, elbow, knee, shoulder, hip coordination is in, as well as the fact that you're coming off of the main sort of thing, the main sort of path that we're on through most of the routine. Yes, there are big sort of crazy turns in it, and that is part of it kind of getting thrown off the normal path. So normally with Yang style Tai Chi, it's very sort of horizontal, back and forth, if we're looking at a clock from 3 to 9. There are some things that come off to 12, especially at the very beginning. You do your opening and come up, and you have that, the main sort of pung is coming this way, but you're actually looking to the corner. And you have Tame Tiger, which comes to 12 and to 6, and things like that. This goes to the corners, so the 4 corners. So if you think about it as clock face, you're going to basically, as we come here, we're at 9, so we'll come in here, think of like 1, maybe 7, 4, 111, sorry, 111, 7, 4. Sorry about that. And so if, corners on the clock sort of thing, or you can think about it, if you're going to northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast, if you want the directional thing of it. So it gets a little confusing. And again, there's a coordination between hands and feet. So the 6 outward harmonies, the hands, feet, elbows, knees, shoulders, hips. Shoulders, hips are always. That's just going to be standard internal Gong Fu practice is shoulders, hips, elbows, knees, hands, feet. Especially shoulders, hips, because this whole block, your whole sort of main torso area and stuff, has to be kind of one piece. You don't want to twist on that thoracic hinge. Again, there's one thing in the I Ching Jing that does that, and the reason it does that is to sort of massage in with the liver. And there's an intonation with it. It's a whole thing specifically with Qigong. To make the martial arts, you've got to have the whole unit working as one unit. The whole chain is one chain. And in order to do that, this whole thing here has to move together as one thing. You can't kind of move here and then be over-rotated one way, or over-rotated one way and then over-rotated the other way. You can't really, that sternum, navel, or middle and lower dantian, or 2nd and 4th chakra, or whatever you want to call it or anything, they've got to stay kind of here and lined up. So that hara line that goes through, so if you take a pole, go through the crown of your head, through your perineum, or if you took a car on the side, it's got the axle that has the 2 wheels on it. That axle goes through your body as well. So that's the chain, so to speak, that if you do chakra system, that all the chakras are lined up along, or if you think about it with Taoism in the 3 main dantians, lower being the one that you kind of focus on the most, the middle and upper. All those, again, all that is along that hara line, that axle, that pole, that's going to go through the crown of your head and straight down and out the perineum. Now, when we say center line, that's the center line we mean. So Peng Jing, which is still going to be a part of Shuttles, is still going to be protecting that center line and expanding from it. Not just the red and dew channel that you can maybe like draw down, your face and down your chest, down your abdomen. It's in, that axle in the body. So keeping that together as we turn, whether or not we're doing like kobu from one side and just going 180 to the other, or we go one side and then we step off that main cardinal direction and then have to keep going and now sort of an obtuse turn. That hara line, those harmonies have to stay in line, aligned, however you want to see it. So, I'm going to do this a couple different ways. I have a couple other videos setting this up. I'm going to try and get everything out kind of together. And to be honest, I did this I did the other one a while ago, and I'm trying to remember all that I have on it. I haven't been able to do this because I just now got this mobile phone with a face-facing lens that is not cracked, and I don't really want to take my laptop everywhere, so it's kind of one of the first opportunities I've had to do this since I filmed the other one, so I can't remember exactly what's on it. Try not to repeat too much, but there's going to be repetition anyway, and especially as we're trying to link everything together. So if there is sort of like, oh my god, dude, we know there's a space and time between filming that might explain some of that. So, we're going to put everything together here in the long form, and I'm going to base all this basically off the long form, the 13, the 16, the 49 in yang style. Those are sort of, we're just going to think of those sort of different categories. Don't worry about that right now. We just think of, like, traditionally that the long form, you learn the long form, and that's got everything you need in it. So if we take the long form, we actually start from single whip, and if facing you is my beginning, my start, so you're my 12 o'clock, it's going to be at the very beginning of the third section, and the single whip is going to basically be facing 9 o'clock. So can you see that? So the mirror here on this side is going to be my 9 o'clock. The mat here on this side is going to be my 3 o'clock. Or if you think about it in a different spatial sense, then the mirror here is going to be my west, and the mat here is going to be my east. It just so happens that's completely opposite of the way I'm actually physically oriented in this space. Hopefully it doesn't confuse me. So if that is one point, so these are my corners. So you can't really see this, but there's a desk here. There's a dry erase there. We can think weapons. Well, there's weapons there too. So we can think weapons. We can think bars. You know, sometimes I'll use points in a space or in a room to call out for some of these things too, if that's more helpful for people. It just helps. I mean, in Cleveland, Lake's right there. I know where north is. You know, if I ever lived inland somewhere, I'd be just totally lost because I couldn't orient off of something. Except maybe, well, I wouldn't have to worry about it. Never mind. Anyway, so if we start single whip going here, so I'm going. So my starting point would be over here. My original starting point of the whole form would be over here. My transition point between sections would be right about where I'm at, right about here. Facing to the west for 9 o'clock. Now I'm going to come back, lift the toes, and as I lift the toes, so my toe, again, hand and feet, so I lift the toes, I turn the palm up, and I cut. Now all my weight wants to be on this back leg, through the back heel. So you got to be real careful that when you're in single whip, this foot is at 45. Because when you sink back, you want your knee and your foot to be aligned, and you want your weight to go through the heel into the ground. So when you pull back, you can lift off the toes. Now, as I turn my dantian, I cut with my hand, and I turn my toes. Now I want to get this foot pretty much as over as I can. So if you can kind of get it turning the other way, great. If it kind of can't, you can only get here instead of here. Just do the best you can with it, because there are ways to kind of be able to adjust appropriately without losing power. So there's a difference between power and force. Without losing the power and the structure, there's ways to adjust. So I come all the way back, hope my alignments are correct in through my heel. I cut and turn. As I do that, I pull in with my left and I cut with my right. My weight's going to come back to the left and I open up and toe out with my right foot. I'm going to bring my weight, so my right foot is going to be facing this way, to that east, to that 3 o'clock. So this cuts as well. I'm going to step up. So as I step up, hand and foot together, I come in, and I'm almost wiping down the outside of my forearm. I come in, and I point. As I point, I step out to the corner with left hand, left foot. I point and draw back. So that, again, we have yang and yin. Yang and yin. We have to have both. Yang and yin. So if something's coming out, something has to come back. And I'm going to rotate my forearm, rotate my radius and ulna, or you can think about turning the thumb down. So I like poke the eyes, they're kind of lifting. I want to rotate and push. Or lift and cut. I would use that sort of idea, those old razor commercials, the lift and cut system. Lift and cut. Now, important note here. Normally, even when we're straight out, in like the traditional sort of Tai Chi bow stance, one foot is straight, the front foot is straight forward, or best you can. I'm pigeon-toed, so I got to cheat a little bit, out. And the back foot's at 45. So what we have usually is going to be a little something like this. Now, there is no difference to that when you come off of the main cardinal points and go to the corners. There's no difference in terms of your actual body structure. The only real difference is your orientation in space. When you come off of that sort of cardinal direction, the only, again, real difference. So if this is my cardinal direction, I'm still straight 45. So if I'm going to the corner, I'm basically doing that. My body still has the same structure to it. I still have straight, I still have 45. It just might seem to look different because your orientation in space has shifted 45 degrees in a way that isn't seen as frequently through the routine. So the difference is if I'm right on my cardinal line, my front foot is on the cardinal line, my back foot is 45. And now the perspective, the sort of relativity I'm using this is now from the perspective of the cardinal directions. My foot is straight, my other foot is 45. Now, if I shift my body perspective, but still keep the point of view, the perspective, the relative sort of, I can't think, there's a word I'm looking for, and I can't think of what it is. That point of view, frame of reference frame. There we go, reference frame. I keep the reference frame from the cardinal directions. I still have a foot that's straight, and I still have a foot that's on the angle. It's just now, it's the back foot seems straight from that ground reference frame, and my front foot seems at an angle. I always want to have this sort of cone as I'm using, where my feet and knees and everything are directed. That cone is what I want to stay in. So even if I'm doing single whip, my feet are still in that 45-degree cone. My arm might seem to be off of that, but this is 180, this is 90 degrees, which you might see in the simplified Tai Chi. This is like 135. So my body here is straight, is to the diagonal, hand is straight. Since my body is to the diagonal, if I was to turn my body from diagonal to straight, so my dantian, if I was to close that and square my hips, then this would still come in straight. So even here, with Yang style, I'm still keeping those 45-degree angles because those are going to be able to help the body stay in unification, up and down the chain. So if you got force coming in, you can neutralize it, redirect it, you can play the 8 energies, you can make the 5 different steppings however you need to, because your body structure is correct to be able to handle that and then respond as one whole with that. So with the feet, we're still going to be in a straight and diagonal thing, but the frame of reference has shifted slightly. And I think sometimes it's that frame of reference off of that normal cardinal thing that shakes some of the idea up. Granted, the stepping's a little funky in the beginning too, but sometimes I've played it myself where I'll play, like even in here, maybe I'll play a sword routine going this way all the time. Then one time maybe I can't because there's a different class going on here, so I have to go on that other way. And there's a bunch of people back in that other room, so I don't want to like eyeball them as I'm playing, so I turn to the other way. So now not only am I in a different section of the room, I'm facing a different way. And I've had that mess with my ability to play my routine in sometimes, because you get so used to one thing that a slight change in that can start throwing it off, because it's gone from the sort of conscious mind into the subconscious, and you're playing that sort of tape almost sometimes. So this is the way it kind of was. Dr. Bruce Lipton would talk about, you got to have, is it him or Wim Hof? Either way, those guys have a similar idea on some of the things. You got to have that wedge to go in there to sort of to be able to then reprogram the thinking. And this can kind of help that wedge. Also, since you're crossing your body in both your feet and your arms, you're getting both sides of your brain to cross over. And so there's almost rewiring going on with that too. So again, in the early stages, this might seem really difficult because there's a lot going on. But it does not, and especially I harp on a lot of like the fundamentals and basics a lot. You get those down, then a lot of the other stuff is going to make these difficult things a little bit easier. So always practice the basics. So we'll talk about just the feet here for a second, just in the beginning. So straight 45, I come back, lift the toes, and kobu. Now my weight's here on my right. When I shift my weight to my left, that's when I can open up that foot. And I want to come off back to that east, to that 3 o'clock line. I'm going to step up and step through. So still straight and curve, but now I'm off that line. The next one, this is where some of the adjustments have to take place. So if we have it where, I'm going to try and shift this a little bit to see the feet a little bit more. So sorry about the adjustment here. And cheers. Eat my tea. Okay, that's an unfortunate shot. Okay, so we go from here, come back, toe in, come back, toe out. So it's not a full peeble, it's just opening up. And remember, I've talked about this before too. In internals, you almost sort of want to set up the next posture. So because the next posture or the next movement that you do, even with an opponent, it wants to be set. Oh, you can't see my head. You want to be set up so it all just goes through at one thing. Whole body can be used in one thing. So I'm setting up in these transitions, and these transitions have a lot of good applications in them. But in these transitions, I'm setting up the posture. So from this next one, this is where some of the way that you can readjust it. We lift. We want to bring the weight all the way back onto the heel through the ground. Lift this toe as high as you can. Now, a lot of times you might just see kind of this and go in. I have found for me, and part of this might be just the way I'm pigeon-toed and everything, when I can lift this higher and then I turn my dantian, it helps me set up the foot better. So that way I don't really have to do as much readjusting. So I'm going here and I turn, and then I got to step out. And at this point, I do have to readjust. My weight, as it transfers, shifts. Now, notice that I stayed on my heel. That's very important for this, at least in Yang style, and at least in the way I've been taught. You know, there might be other people that have different perspectives on it. They might be able to do different stuff. I've seen like Wudang people do stuff slightly different. I have not been taught that. I'm going by what I was taught and what makes sense in terms of the research I've done, I know, during my sort of formal instruction and in the intervening years since, when also I've been an instructor and everything else like that, is you really want to keep that heel down, lift the toes, and pivot on the heel. So the back foot is really where the power is going to drive from. The back foot comes up the knee, into the hips, and then the dantian determines where it's going to come out. So to get power, not force, but power out, you really got to come from that heel. So even if I'm coming in here and down, and I come out, even if I'm readjusting, lifting the toes, lifting the balls of the feet, even if I'm readjusting, I'm still on that heel, and then I can pass through. So you got to keep that heel down, lift the balls of the feet. So you go from here, got 1, 2, smaller adjustment, 3, and then another big turn, 4. And from here we come back in and can start in, pung, and then grasp bird's tail. So that, again, that sort of sequence with the feet kind of throws it off. So those big turns, this, I know some people get confused with this. So we'll review this again, but I want to talk about the big turn here for a second. So the big turns, again, bringing the weight back, empty leg, lift the toes. When you readjust, as you turn, the foot's going to naturally kind of sink down to the ground. What you want to do then is, as your weight's there, readjust. So my weights, there's a couple places to readjust. I'll try and do it here, some here, if I need to. I'll try and do it, so my weight's on my right leg, that's where I'll try and readjust. If you need to readjust on the ball of the feet, it's when the leg is empty, not when there's any weight on it. So see if you can see this here. So again, I'm here. If I'm going to readjust on the ball of my feet, it's right now. My weight's on my right. I need to readjust my left. So that's when I readjust my left to try and point to that 9. So I step out nice and big. If I need to make any tiny readjustment, it's right there. I lift my toes, tiny readjustment into that straight, and step out to the corner. Now this next one is a much easier transition, because all you're doing is going from here to here. So it's a much easier transition. With just the feet, all I'm doing is, again, setting up that back foot, setting up the next posture to go through. That back foot needs to be set up and there to be able to transfer through. So I'm setting up this foot to go straight. I come in, step out, and go. So it's the same taiji stepping as normal. It's just instead of going one way, I'm going here and then stepping out this way. So all I'm adjusting is that back foot, so I can set up. When I set up the step, I can set everything up and go through. So, and then the last turn is a lot like the one to go this way. Because again, it's sort of making a loop and making a loop. So again, I want to come here, readjust the best I can when the weight is not on it. And I come back, step out. Now I have to, again, do a little bit of readjustment. I lift my toes, pivot on the heel slightly, and come through. So, and then it comes back onto the sort of normal thing. So, the hands, feet move together. Keep the hands and feet together And if you can get the feet, you can get the hands. If you can get the hands, you can get the feet. Keep them together. So with the Yang style shuttles, again, there's the two parts. There's three parts. You kind of have the setup, the lifting, and then there's the rotate and push. Then the back hand pulls back, presses down. The top hand presses down. So when we're up, curve the arms back. So you can think, oh, you're grabbing a bag and you're pulling the bag down. From there, since my toes lift, my hands lift. My toes lift, and I'm going to open up the palms, up. Now when I open up the palms, if you're familiar with Bagua, it's twin dragons hold the pearls, or big rock spreads its wings. So when we do that, we want to bring the elbows in slightly. So my wrists are still at the height of my shoulders, palms up, but my elbows slightly come in. Now the way we describe that, the reason for that really, is because we want to collapse the chest and raise the back. In this collapse the chest, raise the back doesn't mean you have like a hunchback, sort of thing, like you sit down too much or, anything like that. No, it's making sure that, I'm American and I'm a guy. So nominally speaking. So we were taught, show any sort of masculinity, it's puff out the chest, shoulders back. No, this is super bad. It creates tension, and not only does it create physical tension, it also will create emotional and energetic tension as well, because you're bringing all this energy up into your heart and into your lungs. And whereas a lot of problems people have is the heart and the lungs. And it'll also start bringing it up in the brain. And all those things, not only will it create stress, will create wear and tear, it'll also encourage anxiety and panic problems. It'll exacerbate any sort of heart or lung issues you might have. It'll exacerbate any sort of brain, emotional issues you might have. So you got to keep that down. This, with the elbows forward, helps you keep that chest relaxed. So the shoulders aren't popping up. The chest isn't being pushed out and tightened and strained. The chest is still collapsed or still kind of curved. There's like a curve. I don't know if you can see it. So there's a different, my hand's out this way. If you can see from shoulder to shoulder, bring my elbows in. You see there's like that different curve between the shoulders, a little bit different, a lot more healthy. So we have it where we want to curve that. So just to show this, the basic thing, we come out, so we come in, and there's going to be the passing under the arms, and you want to shoot out from under the elbows, and the forearms are going to rub. So if you can see, my forearms are actually rubbing. And one of the things for that is it actually helps create and practice like a certain amount of sensitivity. So when you're locked up with someone, Tuisho or Shuaijiao or any of that other stuff, it'll help increase the sensitivity to that, as well as, being able to help kind of neutralize and keep some of your Peng energy and everything with that as well. Be able to execute the energies and the Tida Shuaina and all that good stuff well. So, we're going to come under, split. As we split, I'm bringing the back elbow, or I'm bringing the elbow back. So that's the zhoujing is coming back, since we have something coming forward. And again, you can think of this as, fingers to the eyes, or raise it, someone's got their guard up, and if you come in with this, with their guard up, you're actually driving them up and back as well. So you can think, lifting up, then I rotate and push, pull and press. And then my hands, as I lift my toes, I rotate my hands, palms up, elbows forward. Now, when my foot turns, my hand cuts. And I come in. Underneath, you can step through and down and up. Again, hand cuts. Now, hand and feet. So since my right leg is now going to move, my left leg is going to move. Since my right foot's moving, my right hand's moving. So I got a little dyslexic there, sorry. So as I'm here, since my right's coming in, my right foot's coming in, my right hand's got to come in because they're going to step out together. And as I rotate and push, so as I'm driving from the left leg, I'm pushing with the left hand. I come down, again, up. So I lift the toes, I lift the hand. I cut, so the hand and foot are moving together, cut. As I'm bringing my weight in, so I'm pushing with this back leg, my left leg, so my left hand comes in. My left hand and my left foot are together. When my left foot is sort of crossing in, not crossing, don't forget I said crossing, is coming in towards my right leg, so my left hand is coming under my left arm. So when my left foot steps out, my left arm comes out. I set the foot down and rotate and push all happen at once, like clockwork. So the one wheel is going, and that drives the other wheels. So as I'm here, as this arm rotates, and I'm pushing from the back leg and driving my hip and dantian from corner to square, then the hand comes out and pushes too. So it all is interconnected. All the gears and everything are interconnected. So that's the basic of this all. We'll go over it a few times here, and especially that beginning, because I know there's at least one person where the beginning part's going to be funky. So we're in single whip. I drop back, and I lift my toes. So I move my hand and I cut. As I drop back, I'm going to open this right hand, and since my foot's moving, my hand moves as well. Now, so it's almost like cut, cut, pass. So you got the opponent here, you can think close, close, lift. So they got their arms out like this, or they're reaching, or even if they got a guard up or something like that, you can close their one arm, close the other arm, and as they're bound like this, you come from under, lift them up here. So they're open and spread out, bam, palm strike, or you kind of come in and you can make that whatever else that you want to make that with it. So it's like closing them up and exposing them. So cut, cut, lift, hit. So from single whip, we come back, cut, cut, step up, step out, and push. Draw back and press down. Now from here, I lift up, toes and feet. As I'm turning my dantian, turning my hips, I have to turn my hand and foot. I readjust best that I can. I step in, hand and foot together. I step out. I have to make a slight readjustment here and push. Pull down and press. Come up, slight readjustment. Step in, hand and foot together. Step out, hand and foot together. Rotate and push, pull down and press. And one more, palms up, toe in with the hand and foot together. I'm still sunk here. I haven't raised up or anything else. The time under tension under the knee is the same. Come in, readjust, hand and foot, in, out, and push. And I press down, and that's when we start in almost like the beginning, very beginning again. So I'm going to do it one more time, but I'm not going to say anything with it. So I have to say stuff, I have a tendency to kind of stop. We're just going to do it as one fluid motion. So I tend to think sometimes of the long form as, because there's repetition. This only comes in once, but there's other things that repeat in pretty much it's the same in the second and third, but there's a little bit of it in the first as well. So there's stuff that repeats more than once, and I'll sort of usually show those as a combination. This is sort of this own little function combination exercise, and you can keep it running. You can keep it going and keep it going and loop them and keep playing it. you'll hit a bunch of different directions and stuff, but you can keep looping and playing it. So here. Okay. So there we have Fair or Jade Lady or Lady Lamadin. We have the Fade Lamadin working at Shuttles. It's a little bit of everything. So I'm gonna cut it off here, and hopefully that this, in combination with the other sort of adjunct videos I'm going to have at the different stuff explaining different things. There's going to be repetition, deal with it, and but it's necessary repetition as well. Again, because there's going to be people who are going to learn in different ways and have different ways of looking at things and all that, and so it'll help learn and get things into the head different ways, and then the theory can become the practice into the body, and then they'll kind of come in together, and then they get the brains to be working together and crossing over and all that good stuff. So just remember some of the key things. Keep the basic fundamentals of internal structure. Hands and feet, elbows, knees, shoulders, hips working together. Be careful of your line. Oh, one more thing before I forget. Just hit me. Part of that line is keeping the tailbone tucked in. You don't want to hinge or squat. So I'll see this sometimes in class 2 where we come in and then there's a hinge and a squat. So they might still have the time under tension with the knee, but first of all, they won't be the same because the body, the weight will be distributed out by the butt with the hinge with that, like you're squatting or deadlifting. You want to stay straight. That's part of the Hada line, is keeping the tailbone tucked in. So when we're turning, none of the squatting or hinging. Actually, that kind of hurts. So as we're turning, nice and straight, nice and straight. When you're able to, really sink in with the feet and be able to transfer your weight appropriately as well, it'll be a lot easier. I think sometimes people being able to transfer the weight fully and understanding that the empty and fullness with the legs and being able to put the weight through the heels into the ground and making sure those alignments between foot and knee and hip are correct. It makes it a lot easier to keep that tailbone tucked in. It makes it a lot easier to be able to keep from hinging. There might be, if you do swai-jiao, you do pushing form or something, there's going to be some of the hinging. You do not want to hinge. You don't want to have that squat position in with internals, especially yang taiji. Don't have it. So I've seen people try and do that in tournaments, and they'll have like that hinge or that squat, and sometimes they'll stand there and pose. None of that's internal. Posing and stopping, it doesn't show power in internals. It might show power supposedly in external stuff, and that's a different mindset. In the mindset with internals that doesn't show power, that shows your squatting, that shows your hinging, that doesn't show internal power. So keep the tailbone tucked in. All right, on that note, thank you. Like, subscribe. I hope this helps. I know it might have seemed like I bounced around a little bit, but it's all pertinent. And I know from experience, not only my own experience, but the experience of other students that I trained with and students that I've trained, that it is sometimes one of the it's a little troubling and can be a little daunting, a little it's, well, I mean, again, thinking of words, the word I want is kind of gone, but it can be a struggle sometimes for some people. And then you just kind of got to get the timing right and the body right and knowing how to get the weight to distribute and sync and then distribute and all that stuff right. So, and there's kind of a lot of moving parts, but as long as you have the basics down and everything like that, it can still be made applicable there. So now, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and thank you for watching, and good hunting.